You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai and always a pleasure to be in conversation with the Germar Reed. He is a data science and analytics leader, senior advisor, General Motors, and founder of District Analyst. He is our resident data justice contributor, and we have so much to sift through. Welcome back, Germar.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nee. Glad to be back.
Well, thank you for being here, Germar. I want to start with a trial that started today that could reshape the internet as we know it, literally. Meta is in federal court facing a coalition of not one, not two, not five, not 10, but 29 states accused of designing Instagram and Facebook to be deliberately addictive to kids. And this is the headline part. Allegedly trying to cover up or bury their own internal research showing the harm. We're talking testimony expected from Mark Zuckerberg himself, from Instagram CEO and the former Meta employee turned whistleblower. States are seeking penalties that could run into the trillions of dollars. Germar, from a data science perspective, walk us through what it actually means when a company allegedly instructs its lawyers to tell employees to remove or block or limit internal research. That's not just a PR problem, is it?
It's not. It's actually, I think that it's something that employees that are working for companies that are willing to push them to remove information, remove data, that is essentially there to tell the truth, to actually go back and look at historical data to find out why we made certain decisions, why we didn't move forward with certain decisions. I think that, absolutely that should be a crime, because that number one, it erodes the public trust in organizations that oftentimes we'll see them making the case for putting trust in their organizations in this case to manage data and to tell and use that data to tell the truth. This is actually telling the opposite story. So I absolutely find this to be, and this will be an interesting trial. A lot of interesting information coming out of it. I mean, yeah, Dr. Nee, this is going to be an interesting one to follow.
And Germar, from a data governance standpoint, and this is an issue that dominates a lot of the headlines. Your everyday person doesn't necessarily think about it as data governance, but the way that we manage, the way that organizations, that companies manage our data, particularly our personal identifiable information. What does it mean when a company allegedly weaponizes attorney-client privilege to bury internal research?
Right. I mean, data governance is something that's, and we've talked about this, a couple of times. It's very important. And then the other thing is, it also brings to mind, this is something where we, yes, we will trust, but we need to verify. And that goes back to, a company cannot be responsible for both owning the data, but then also being responsible for being the only one checking that. This makes them the only, like, the digital gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. And this is like someone owning the only road in the town and having the ability to say, hey, I will check myself and make sure that I'm being fair about who's able to come and go and what information or what people we're allowing in and out of town. We need a third party. Yeah.
Germar, if Meta loses, what actually changes about how Instagram, how Facebook, how these platforms are built, or is it just a very expensive cost of doing business?
I regretfully, I think that, again, that's a large cost of doing business. You said we're in the trillions there. But also, what I hope happens is that companies think twice and they actually push data governance further up in the importance with regard to how they handle their customers' data. I hope that this applies the pressure that's needed for organizations to not only improve data governance and improve the importance of data governance, but also to make sure that they are putting on paper and putting on paper what it means if you go in the opposite direction. Your leaders are actively instructing folks on your team to hide information. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And and I know our community over indexes on social media engagement and some age brackets. What
Right.
should Black and brown parents specifically be watching for in this case?
Right. We have to guard the minds of our children. We have to guard the information that they have access to. But as you can see, and as we will see, and probably in this trial, and as we see a lot of these articles that we discuss on a weekly basis, we cannot leave it up to organizations that want us to trust them with our information and how they present that data. We cannot trust them with the minds and the thoughts and the ideas of our children, and that's where we come into place, and that's where we have to be active in making those decisions for them, and as they become older, as they become young adults, helping them to make the right decisions about what information they're accessing. Yeah.
Well, it's also worth noting that the trial opened today in Oakland
Right.
federal court. California Attorney General Rob Bonta is among the leading plaintiffs' voices. And
Mhm.
states are seeking up to, again, $1.4 trillion in penalties. So we're going to be following this story closely. But I want to move on to another headline that is swirling in the news. Health data is hit hardest, making up about 40% of what's been affected, according to the tracker from dataindex.us. Jamar, uh, you know, you work for a number of companies, work with a number of companies, I should say. You work
Yep.
with data basically for a living. What
Yep.
happens to a democracy, practically speaking,
Mhm.
when the government itself becomes an unreliable narrator of its own facts?
Right. You start to lose the trust of the people that have put you in office, and not only people that have put you in office, in the institutions, that we start to lose the trust in the institutions. I mean, the act of removing data, to going in actively and removing the data that you don't want in place, it just lowers the trust. It's like flying an airplane, with the radar system, and then deciding to turn it off, and you're expected to find the storm and to land safely. Um, removing public health data it's dangerous. We need to be able to look back on that historical information in order to and so that those folks that are put in position to make decisions are able to use historical data in order to make the right decisions, to guard our health and our safety.
And that's a part of the reason why this story is so egregious. For folks who are
Yep.
unfamiliar, there's a new report that's out that the Trump administration has deleted or
Yep.
altered nearly 400 federal data sets over the past year and a half. We're talking about public health data, we're talking about education data, even a database tracking police misconduct gone or altered. And
Right.
so, Jamar, I've got to ask you, when public health data disappears, who
Yep.
actually gets hurt first? Researchers or regular families trying to make decisions?
Regular families, and I mean, and honestly, it's not their data to change. The data is a foundational asset, that people rely on for evidence-based governance, and that data belongs to the taxpayer, and it's put in place to safeguard the taxpayer, and it belongs to the public. It does not belong to those that we put in
Mhm.
office.
Jamar, is there a way that private or academic institutions can be a backstop to this kind of data loss?
Yeah, you know what, I love what with young people, and not just young people, they're in our age group as well. Maybe we're still in that age group, but I love what folks started to do with regard to social media. Folks would post images and memes on social media and then remove them quickly. But I love the fact that there's the ability to go back and recapture what someone said and tried to remove. And I think that that's something that could be applied on the public side, and that
Yeah.
people that organizations can do to make sure that we hold folks accountable for that information.
When we come forward, we're going to talk about surveillance. The ACLU, they just put out a pretty scathing breakdown of Flock's safety license plate reading cameras. We've been talking about these Flock safety license plate readers for quite a bit. Well, they just put out a scathing breakdown where over 120,000 of them exist nationwide. Flock announced that they're, quote, reforming or cutting data retention from 30 days to 7. The ACLU's response, essentially, nice try. We're going to get into that when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580 with Germar Reed. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and really delighted to be in conversation with a data analyst, our resident data justice contributor, and the founder of Data Analyst LLC, Germar Reed. Lots of headlines swirling related to our data, related to artificial intelligence. And so you better believe we got the right one. Germar, sticking with data and democracy, we opened the show talking about people gambling on wildfires. And now I want to talk a little bit about this story from ACLU. Basically, these Flock cameras that are like everywhere. I mean, Flock is aggressively going after contracts with cities and counties across the country. People might have heard about Flock's safety, their license plate reading camera, where there are over 120,000 of them nationwide. We've seen documented cases of these cameras being used to stalk executives, track people seeking abortion care, and monitor protesters. Germar, from a systems perspective, is a database like this ever reformable, or is mass surveillance infrastructure, is that just mass surveillance infrastructure, no matter how you dress it up?
I think it's the latter. It's an infrastructure put in place to basically surveil, and I think the only safeguard for this is again, those third-party audit, the third-party audit systems, and then also our state. I'll say our state and local government putting systems in place and laws in place in order to monitor what these organizations are doing as far as collecting this data. And I mean, you just made you just stated a lot of situations that should give folks pause. And the fact that this information is being collected, and I think you said before we went on the break that they're reducing the amount of data, the time of the data that they're keeping, but the fact that they're collecting it, and I would go a step further and say using it, that should give us pause.
I mean, it certainly gives me pause. And
right.
Look, as we head into November, folks should absolutely be paying attention to this and where candidates stand on reining in the surveillance state that is growing like gangbusters right before our very eyes. We should make it our business to show up at city council meetings. If you're in Los Angeles, you should make it a priority to show up to a neighborhood council meeting, because this stuff will soon visit itself on our doors for sure. Germar, sticking with data and democracy, we opened the show again talking about people gambling on wildfires, and it turns out that election officials are bracing for prediction markets to cause some real chaos in the midterms. Nearly $200 million has already been wagered on midterm outcomes on platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket. And here's the kicker. A survey found that 75% of people couldn't correctly explain what those market odds even represent. So more than a third thought the odds were the actual vote count or an official projection. And in the Wisconsin governor's primary, both major prediction markets had the wrong candidate winning right up until real votes started coming in. And so, Germar, as someone who works with probability and modeling professionally, what's the actual difference between a prediction market and a poll? And why does that distinction matter to voters?
Right. I think the difference is that a poll, and we've been polling for years and using polls to actually help us to determine where things are going. And I think the difference there is the polling is actually it's information coming from real voters, from actual voters, whereas building predictive models you're looking at historical data, you're marrying that up, and again, I use predictive models to help me to understand where things are going, but I also understand that this information isn't being gathered from real people. We're using historical data and we're marrying it up again. We're creating models with that in order to predict where we're going, but it's different from actually gathering actual information and feedback from folks that will be showing up to vote. So people have to understand the difference in that. The thing I worry about is if by chance or by accident a news organization mistakenly puts up a predictive account or predictive model, the results of a predictive model in place of actual polling data, and this is going on while folks are voting, and it shifts. It either causes folks not to show up to the poll because they think all is lost, or it gives the false information around, hey, my candidate is ahead, so I decided, not to go to the polls on voting day because my candidate is ahead. They're predicted to win.
I mean,
that's a scary thing.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point that if a market shows the wrong candidate as a 90% favorite and they lose, let's talk about what damage that does to the public trust, regardless of whether the market was ever meant to be a prediction.
Right. No, Doc, you bring up a great point. I mean, we already have this. We already have a situation where folks don't trust the results of elections, and even our current president put out a lot of information about not trusting the results of the election, and I think this furthers that cause. This furthers that issue. Like you said, if we have a situation where someone is predicted to win but they lose, this creates further trust or distrust in our democracy. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Germar. It's the $1 million question. Pun very much intended. Should election workers be barred from participating in these markets? I know some counties are already doing this.
You know what? I'm kind of, I'm processing this. My initial answer is yes. I mean, it's kind of like a referee of a basketball game or football game, having the ability to bet on the game that they're actually refereeing. And if you're going to be working the polls, I think that there should be a separation between the two. You should have no vested interest other than the fact that you're a voting citizen in a candidate winning because it's tied to your pocketbook. I mean, markets prioritize, being first with information, while it's democracy, that should prioritize, the right person winning that election, the person who garnered the most votes and won the election.
And speaking of, folks cashing in, there's a story that might make your skin crawl. Private intelligence firms, we're talking about corporate spy shops, essentially. They are literally selling surveillance dossiers on regular American citizens who protest AI data centers and big tech expansion. One firm offered a report to a federal agency framing ordinary grassroots concerns about pollution and job loss and rising utility bills in the language of, get this, counter-terrorism. And so, Germar, I've got to ask you, everyday people showing up to a city council meeting about a data center in their neighborhood or now getting filed. They're now getting filed under the same threat category as violent extremists. What does that do long-term to people's willingness to show up and speak out at all?
I mean, it's going to depress it. I mean, I'm going to tell you, as someone in my neighborhood, when we have issues or questions come up in my neighborhood, my wife and I, we're at those meetings because it involves the neighborhood in which we live in, and I think that we should be encouraging folks to be more active in their neighborhoods, not creating a sense of fear for showing up to voice your opinion and to speak on what happens in the neighborhood in which you have ownership in. You've created community, you've created friendships with your neighbors. We should be able to gather and discuss how we will govern ourselves locally without fear of ending up in some dossier. You know, I think it's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is wild stuff. You heard me just
Yeah.
encouraging people to you show up at your city council meeting, to
Right.
show up at campaign events, and challenge the folks who are running to get your vote in their campaign for public office. And we certainly don't want to see anybody catch a case. We certainly don't want to put anybody in harm's way. Essentially, are we watching this the surveillance lobby, if you will, bully everyday people?
I think we are, Doc, and I'm going to say, even as we go to commercial, I love to listen to the creative ways in which KBLA encourages people to get active, to be active, to vote, to show up, to respectfully challenge your city council members, to respectfully let them know what it is that, hey, we sent you to office to do this, and we're looking to hold you accountable, to show up and say, hey, have you delivered what you said you would deliver? So I think, by doing this, we're encouraging folks to do the opposite. And I don't know about you, Doc, and I actually I probably do. I like I said, on this station, I listen to during the commercial break, and it's something that you all are creative and encouraging folks to get active. I think it's the opposite of what we want. And I just want to say this last piece here: our elected officials should encourage people to voice their opinion. That's where, if folks are being made to bottle up their opinions and their thoughts and ideas around how their neighborhood should run, that's where you see folks hit the streets and the frustration happen. So yeah, I'll leave it there, Doc. Yeah.
No. I want to double click on everything you just said. And speaking of public officials encouraging and, quite frankly, affirming, folks in their communities, and in this case in their state, standing up and making their voices heard, I want to shine a light on some of the work that Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro is leading. It's worth noting that in the same week that this story broke about these private firms selling threat dossiers on data center protesters, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, he signed a sweeping executive order dramatically restricting data centers development in his state, calling it the nation's strictest guardrails on AI infrastructure. Developers now need local community approval before the state will ever process their payments. Process their permits. And so Governor Shapiro was previously a vocal champion of data center development in Pennsylvania, including a $20 billion Amazon commitment. This is a documented reversal, according to multiple outlets. His Republican challenger, State Treasurer Stacey Garrity, has accused him of political opportunism, presenting both without editorializing on motive, and that's what we're doing. We're doing that. But Germar, I want to ask you: is Shapiro leading? Is he leading in such a way? Is he reading the political winds correctly here? Because it feels like protect us from AI's appetite for power and water might be a genuinely bipartisan issue in a way almost nothing else is right now.
Now, Doc, I agree with you, and I think that this is I don't think you can go wrong in this season in holding data centers accountable for getting the sign off and the support of those in the neighborhood, in the communities in which they want to be placed. Again, I agree with the I think it was a congresswoman that you mentioned that this may be political theater, but to be honest, I'm fine with that. This is where we force folks that may not have aligned in the past. They may have aligned with special interests. This is where you force folks to align with the interests of the people that you're actually you're campaigning to govern. And I think that's the beauty of it. I'm fine with the fact that this may be political theater, but and I would just call out on a personal note. one thing I pay attention to, the property values around the places where data centers are looking to be placed. And I watch folks that may have owned, like in my instance, looking at family farms that may have been in place for years, and the property value, the family has built something on the asset that they own, and watching that come down, and watching some of those families try to sell off those farms back in the Midwest where my family's from, watching some of those families that have owned that property start to sell off. So I applaud the governor for making this move. And I also recognize that it may be political theater, but hey, this is where we push those that represent us to align to what we need and what we want.
That's right. Our thanks to Germar Reed, the founder of Data Analyst LLC, District Analyst LLC, and also our resident data justice contributor. We appreciate the clarity that you bring to the people.
Appreciate you, Doc.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, these next stories involve alleged child abuse, including alleged, sexual abuse. And we're going to talk to you about a Tennessee youth prison CEO that's accused of burying that abuse and ignoring 911 calls. This is a story that has been investigated by ProPublica that you absolutely have to know. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.